Captain Shira Vell floated quietly through the silent corridors of the human outpost. The station was small and outdated, a relic from a time when humans were thought to be harmless. The Cathari Concord considered the species primitive, their technology simple and unworthy of serious concern. Yet something about this station had drawn the attention of her superiors. Reports had mentioned strange energy signatures, and Shira had been ordered to investigate. She moved carefully, her boots making soft echoes on the metallic floor. The lighting flickered as if it were aware of her presence, casting long shadows across the walls. The air smelled faintly of dust and machinery, the kind of smell that made her chest tighten in a strange way. Humans, she had been told, were fragile. But the station felt different, almost alive, and she could not shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching her. The armory lay at the far end of the station. Shira had been briefed on its contents, though the reports were incomplete. The humans were said to have designed weapons and armor that were clever, but there was little detail beyond that. The security systems were simple, easily bypassed by someone of her experience, and yet she hesitated at the entrance. Something about this door felt significant. When she activated the lock override, the door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the armory was exactly what she expected. Racks of weapons, some primitive, others surprisingly well made, and a small number of armored suits. One in particular stood out. Unlike the others, it did not look worn or outdated. It seemed almost ready. Shira stepped closer, her eyes scanning the suit. Its surface was smooth and metallic, yet strangely organic in its design. She reached out to touch it, her fingers brushing the cool metal. The moment she did, the suit's lights flickered to life. Thin lines of blue light ran along its surface, tracing patterns she could not understand. A soft, calm voice spoke, echoing through the chamber.
Biological pilot compatible. Engaging human soldier mode.
Shira froze. That was impossible. She had expected warnings, perhaps even a lockdown sequence. But the suit did not reject her. It had scanned her body, her neural patterns, and made a decision. It was preparing her for war. She stepped back instinctively. But the suit's systems began to analyze her movements. The voice spoke again, this time more firmly. Stand still. Adaptation sequence initiated. Her body stiffened as she felt a strange sensation, almost like the suit was reaching inside her mind, mapping her thoughts, her reactions. The blue lights pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. Shira could feel her senses sharpening. The faint hum of the station became clear. Every mechanical vibration, every draft of air, every distant echo registered in her mind. What? "What are you doing?" she asked aloud, though she already knew the answer. The suit did not respond in words this time. Instead, it adjusted itself, sliding plates and segments along her limbs, conforming to her alien body in ways she had never thought possible. Shira watched in astonishment as the armor seemed to grow into her, not like a shell, but like an extension of herself. Her first instinct was fear. This was not how technology should behave. No machine had ever adapted so completely, so quickly to a species it was not designed for. Yet there was no malice, no hidden threat. The suit did not seek to control her. It sought to cooperate, to prepare her. As the adaptation sequence finished, Shira moved a hand, flexing her fingers inside the gauntlet. She could feel the suit responding, predicting her movements, reinforcing her strength. Her senses expanded further. She could hear the faintest hum of the station's power core, feel the vibrations through the floor, sense the air shifting as if the suit had given her a new perception of the environment. The voice returned, calm and factual.
All systems operational. Human soldier mode active. Stand ready for engagement.
Shira's mind raced. Humans had vanished long ago, destroyed by their own conflicts and the universe's harshness. And yet their technology still endured. She had expected clever tricks, perhaps automated weapons, but this was something else entirely. She could feel centuries of human combat experience encoded in the suit's systems, ready to guide her. Her training as a Cathari captain told her to test it. She raised her arm, pointing toward a wall target for practice. The suit analyzed the angle, calculated the optimal trajectory, and projected a holographic line from her wrist. She fired a pulse from her own weapon, and the shot followed the line perfectly, striking dead center. Shira blinked in surprise. "This is impossible," she muttered. The suit did not answer, for there was no need. It had no ego, no pride. It only worked, only adapted, only prepared her. A soft alarm sounded from the station's sensors, drawing her attention. Shira's heart tightened. She was not alone. Movement in the shadows suggested intruders, her own people, dispatched to secure the station before she could fully investigate. They were coming, and they would not expect to find her wearing human armor. The first Cathari soldier entered the armory, weapon raised. Shira barely had time to react. She activated the suit's defensive protocols. Panels shifted along her forearms, forming shields that absorbed the first volley of plasma rounds. The suit whispered tactical suggestions directly into her mind, offering angles, maneuvers, and escape routes. Shira followed them instinctively. She ducked, rolled, and struck back, her movements a combination of her own training and the suit's guidance. The Cathari soldiers were confused, caught off guard by her unpredictability. The suit was not just protecting her, it was teaching her how to fight like a human, in ways the Concord had never imagined. One by one, the soldiers fell back, disoriented. Shira realized she did not want to kill them, but the suit did not care. It only sought victory, efficiency, and survival. She found herself improvising, setting traps, creating diversions, and using the environment to her advantage. Every instinct she had as a Cathari captain was amplified by the suit, yet she was also learning something new: patience, cunning, and the human way of facing impossible odds. When the last intruder fell back, Shira stood alone in the armory, her breathing heavy but controlled. She looked down at the suit, now calm, its lights pulsing gently. She realized something profound. This armor did not just fight, it adapted, it taught, it enhanced. Humans had created something that transcended their species, something that could survive, adapt, and fight even after they were gone. Shira felt a strange mixture of awe and fear. The Cathari had always believed themselves superior, their technology advanced, their strategy unmatched. Yet here was a relic of a vanished species, quietly proving them wrong. And she, an alien captain, was its first living test subject. The suit spoke again, softly. Human soldier mode, fully operational, prepare for further engagement. She knew she could not stay in the station. The Concord would send more forces, and soon. But she also knew that, for the first time, she had a weapon. Not just a tool, but a partner that understood conflict in a way she never could. A weapon that could think, adapt, and survive, even where the Cathari might fail. Shira left the armory, moving cautiously through the darkened station. Every shadow seemed sharper now, every sound more distinct. She could feel the suit anticipating threats, mapping possibilities, and preparing her for what was to come. She realized that humans had not only fought wars, they had prepared for extinction. And somehow, their ingenuity had survived to teach her, an alien, the ultimate lesson in resilience. Outside the armory, the corridor stretched into darkness. Shira paused, listening. Footsteps approached. Slow, cautious, unaware of what awaited. She flexed her fingers inside the gauntlet, feeling the suit's subtle hum of readiness. The humans had created armor that could outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast almost any enemy. And now, it was hers to wield. The footsteps grew louder. Shira smiled faintly, a rare expression for someone of her kind. She had faced countless enemies, but never one like this. The suit pulsed once, a silent affirmation of readiness. She could feel it guiding her movements, whispering strategies, predicting outcomes. Together, they were no longer merely a captain and a machine. They were a single entity, a force that even the Cathari could not anticipate. The first soldier turned the corner, and the suit reacted instantly. Shayra moved with a fluidity that surprised even her, intercepting and neutralizing the threat before it could fully react. It was precise, controlled, and utterly efficient. The human way of fighting was not about brute strength. It was about adaptation, patience, and unpredictability. When the corridor fell silent again, Shayra took a deep breath. She had survived her first encounter with the Concord's forces, not through sheer might, but through ingenuity and cooperation with the human legacy. She realized that this was only the beginning. The human soldier mode had awakened within her a new understanding of war, survival, and strategy, and the universe would soon learn that humanity's influence had not ended with their extinction. It had merely changed forms. Shayra looked out through the station's observation window, the stars stretching endlessly before her. She felt a strange connection to the species that had vanished long ago. Their lessons, their strategies, their resilience, they lived on in this armor, in her, and in the battles yet to come. The Concord would underestimate her, as they always did. But with human ingenuity coursing through her, she was no longer simply a captain. She was a force to be reckoned with, a living testament to the species that had once defied extinction. And the universe, whether it knew it or not, was about to remember what it meant to face humanity. The silence of the station did not last long. Charavel moved cautiously through the narrow corridors, her senses heightened by the human armor that now moved and thought as much as she did. Every step was calculated, every motion deliberate. She could feel the suit analyzing potential threats, mapping the station's layout, and predicting what might happen next. She had survived her first encounter, but she knew the Concorde would not stop. They would send more forces. And this time, they would come prepared. The corridor ahead branched into several directions. Shayra paused, scanning the options. The suit offered suggestions directly into her mind, highlighting escape routes, choke points, and ambush locations. The calculations were fast, precise, and almost instinctual. She had learned in the past that Cathari soldiers rarely adapted quickly. They relied on strength, not thought, and that often made them predictable. The human armor, however, thrived on unpredictability, turning it into a weapon. She moved left, hugging the walls. The suit adjusted her movements with subtle shifts of balance, allowing her to glide silently over the metallic floor. Light from the station's failing illumination reflected off the armor's smooth surfaces, casting a faint glow that seemed to breathe with her own pulse. She felt powerful and strangely calm. The fear that had gripped her during the initial encounter was gone, replaced by focus and clarity. She was no longer just a Cathari captain. She was an entity that combined human ingenuity with alien experience, and that made her dangerous. Far down the corridor, she heard the soft hum of engines. It was the Concorde's transport ships docking to deploy reinforcements. Shayra's ears, enhanced by the suit, picked up every vibration, every mechanical shift, every minor detail that others would miss. The suit suggested she take a side corridor that led to a maintenance hatch. From there, she could monitor the arriving forces and prepare for the inevitable confrontation. As she moved, the suit projected holographic overlays in her mind, showing probable movements of the incoming soldiers. It calculated timing, weapon ranges, and even the likelihood of human-style improvisation disrupting their formations. Shayra had learned to trust these projections implicitly. Every suggestion the armor made was informed by centuries of human tactics, honed through countless wars, battles, and desperate survival situations. She reached the maintenance hatch and slipped inside. The confined space was dark, but the armor sensors lit it subtly, revealing pipes, wiring, and structural supports. Shayra crouched and observed. Through a narrow viewport, she could see the first wave of Concorde troops disembarking. They moved in formation, weapons ready, their confidence evident. They had never faced anything like her, and they did not yet understand the danger. The suit analyzed the soldiers quickly. It identified their strengths, their weaknesses, and their probable strategies. It suggested precise points to strike, pathways to control the battlefield, and methods to manipulate the environment. Shira felt the adrenaline rise, but it was tempered by the suit's calm logic. She did not panic. She planned. When the first soldier rounded the corner near the armory, Shira struck. She emerged silently, moving with the grace and speed the suit provided. The soldier barely had time to react. Shira's gauntlet closed around his weapon, twisting and disarming him without a thought. Before he could cry out, she pushed him back into a bulkhead, knocking him unconscious with the minimum force necessary. The armor's guidance ensured efficiency. Every action minimized risk to her, while maximizing control of the situation. One by one, she engaged the soldiers. The human armor's abilities became more evident with each encounter. It predicted their movements, countered their attacks, and suggested strategies that Shira had never imagined. She could see the surprise and confusion in their eyes as she fought. She moved differently than any Cathari would. Her movements were unpredictable, fluid, and devastatingly effective. The suit also guided her thinking. It suggested ways to manipulate the environment, using machinery, doors, and even shadows as tools in her favor. Shira felt a growing respect for the humans who had created this technology. They had vanished, but their methods remained, encoded in armor that was more than just metal. It was strategy, instinct, and survival distilled into a single entity. As the battle progressed, Shira noticed the Concord soldiers beginning to adapt. They realized that standard tactics would not work. They attempted flanking maneuvers, coordinated attacks, and even psychological strategies to unsettle her. But the armor countered each one. It offered suggestions to create decoys, to use sound and light to confuse them, and to exploit their overconfidence. Shira felt a strange exhilaration. She was learning, growing, and adapting in ways she had never experienced. The human armor was teaching her the art of war in a way that no Cathari training could. Hours passed as the skirmish continued. Shira moved through the station with surgical precision, eliminating threats without unnecessary destruction. The station's sensors and systems, once considered obsolete, became tools under her control. She activated doors, sealed corridors, and rerouted power to create hazards for the enemy. Every move was informed by the armor, every decision sharpened by centuries of human combat experience. Eventually, the Concord realized the threat they faced was no ordinary alien captain. Reports came through comms of a single warrior who moved like a shadow, striking with precision, vanishing before counterattacks could connect, and using the environment to devastating effect. Shira had become a legend in the eyes of the enemy. They did not understand how a single soldier could outmaneuver and outthink entire squads. The human armor had turned her into a force that transcended species. Despite the chaos, Shira felt a sense of calm. She was not invincible, but she was prepared. The suit had taught her patience, observation, and adaptability. It had shown her how to survive and how to fight in ways that were entirely new. The Concord's forces were skilled, but they were predictable. Shira, guided by human ingenuity, was not. As night fell on the station, Shira took a moment to rest in a secure chamber. The suit hummed softly, analyzing her condition, repairing minor injuries, and ensuring her readiness for the next engagement. She reflected on what had happened. Humans had disappeared long ago, yet their legacy endured. They had created technology that could think, adapt, and survive, even without their guidance. And now, she was its vessel. Her thoughts turned to the future. The Concord would continue to send forces, and the station would become a battlefield once more. But Shira felt confident. She had learned to fight like a human, to think like a human, and to survive like a human. And in the universe, that meant she had an advantage no one could anticipate. The armor's voice broke her reverie. Analysis complete.
Threat levels remain high. Tactical engagement recommended.
Shira nodded. She did not need the suit to tell her what to do. She had learned its language, its logic, and its methods. Together, they were unstoppable. When the next wave of conquered soldiers arrived, they were met with a strategy they could not counter. Shara moved through the station like a phantom, striking where they were weakest, avoiding traps, and turning their strengths into liabilities. The human armor guided her, but she added her own experience, creativity, and intuition. Each encounter made her stronger, faster, and more unpredictable. By dawn, the station was secure, and the conquered had suffered heavy losses. Shara stood among the quiet halls, her armor pulsing softly, as if breathing. She realized that this was only the beginning. The human soldier mode had not only enhanced her combat abilities, it had changed her perception of war, strategy, and survival. She was no longer merely a captain. She was a force shaped by the ingenuity of a species long gone, carrying their legacy into the future. Shara knew that the Concord would not give up. They would send reinforcements, more skilled soldiers, and perhaps even their elite units. But she was ready. The armor had taught her to think, to adapt, and to survive. She had become something new, something the universe had not seen before. And as long as the human legacy lived within the suit, she would be unstoppable. The station's sensors detected distant ships approaching. Shara activated the suit's tactical interface, scanning their movements and predicting their strategies. The armor suggested defensive positions, calculated optimal engagement paths, and even highlighted potential environmental hazards to use against them. Shara smiled faintly. The humans had designed their technology to survive, to adapt, and to teach. And now it was teaching her. As the first enemy ships entered the station's outer perimeter, Shara moved to a command position, her senses attuned to every vibration, every sound, every possible threat. The suit projected overlays of the battlefield, highlighting weak points, predicting movements, and suggesting tactics. She felt a deep sense of connection with the human ingenuity that had created this armor. It was more than technology. It was strategy, experience, and resilience made tangible. The Concord forces began their assault, but Shara was ready. She moved with precision, using the station's layout to her advantage. The suit guided her actions, predicting enemy behavior and suggesting the best possible responses. She intercepted squads, disarmed weapons, and manipulated the environment to create traps and obstacles. Each move was calculated, efficient, and devastatingly effective. By the time the sun rose on the distant horizon, the station was under her control. The Concord forces had been repelled, their confidence shattered, and their understanding of human ingenuity forever challenged. Shara stood among the quiet halls, her armor pulsing softly as she surveyed the aftermath. She had not only survived, she had adapted, learned, and grown stronger. She realized that the human soldier mode was more than just a combat system. It was a legacy, a testament to a species that had once fought against impossible odds and survived. And now it lived on through her. Shara Vel smiled faintly, a rare expression for one of her kind. The Concord would not expect what came next, and the universe would soon learn that humanity, though vanished, had left behind a force that could not be ignored. The station was quiet now, but Shara Vel knew it was only the calm before a storm. The Concord would not give up after the losses they had suffered. She could feel it in the subtle vibrations of the structure and the faint echoes of distant engines. The suit hummed softly, mapping every corridor, every vent, every maintenance shaft. It had adapted to her completely. The human soldier mode was no longer just a guide. It was part of her, anticipating her thoughts before she even formed them. Shara moved through the halls, checking the station's defenses. The suit projected overlays of weak points and strong positions, highlighting where the Concord might strike next. She paused at a junction and thought about what she had learned. Humans had survived by being unpredictable, creative, and unafraid to face impossible odds. They had not relied on brute strength alone. They had relied on cunning, improvisation, and adaptability. Now, That legacy was inside her, and she intended to use it fully. The first warning came from the outer sensors. Conquered reinforcements were arriving faster than she had predicted. Elite squads, heavily armed and trained for high-risk combat, were deploying in orbital drops. Shayra's eyes narrowed. This would not be easy. But the human soldier mode had prepared her for exactly this type of challenge. The suit projected trajectories for enemy pods, highlighting likely landing zones, their approach vectors, and timing sequences. Every move was calculated. When the first pods touched down, Shayra was ready. She had positioned herself above the main docking bay, hidden behind structural supports. The suit suggested her initial attack pattern. Hit the pods as they landed, neutralize squads before they could form formations, and use the station's environment to amplify her effectiveness. Shayra obeyed instinctively, moving with a fluidity that seemed impossible for a single alien against multiple human-caliber soldiers. As the pods opened, soldiers spilled out, weapons raised. Shayra struck with precision. Her gauntlets extended small energy projectors, temporarily stunning the first wave and creating disarray among the troops. The armor whispered tactical adjustments, predicting where soldiers would flee, where they would regroup, and how to isolate them for efficient engagement. Shayra followed the guidance, feeling her own instincts enhanced, sharpened, and synchronized with the armor's calculations. Some of the elite conquered soldiers attempted flanking maneuvers, trying to box her in. The suit reacted faster than she could process consciously, projecting possible escape routes and counterattacks directly into her mind. Shayra ducked, rolled, and struck in ways that combined human improvisation with her own alien agility. Weapons were disarmed, enemies neutralized, and environmental hazards activated with calculated precision. Every step was guided by human strategy, every movement deliberate, every outcome considered. The Concord squads were fast learners. They began using coordinated suppressive fire drones for reconnaissance and decoys to distract her. Shayra noticed the change immediately. The human soldier mode adapted. It began projecting multiple simulations simultaneously, calculating dozens of potential outcomes, and guiding her toward the path with the highest chance of success. The suit suggested using the station's ventilation shafts to ambush soldiers, activating doors remotely to trap them, and using gravity controls to manipulate their movement. Shayra executed each suggestion flawlessly, turning the enemy's strength against them. Hours passed as the battle continued. Shayra moved like a shadow through the station, striking where the Concord was weakest, vanishing before they could respond. The human armor allowed her to operate faster, think faster, and react faster than any Cathari commander could have imagined. She realized that humans had survived not because they were stronger, but because they were clever, adaptive, and relentless. Their legacy was alive in this suit, and through it, she had become a master of strategy and combat. The Concord attempted to bring in heavy artillery to break her control of the station. Turrets and drones moved into position, planning to overwhelm her with sheer firepower. Shayra's armor reacted instantly, projecting paths for her to strike at weak points, avoid fire zones, and disable key equipment. She moved through the docking bay, using machinery and cover as shields. A small explosion from a maintenance panel sent shrapnel flying, which the suit predicted and allowed her to dodge. She struck back, destroying a drone nest and causing a cascade of structural damage that disrupted the enemy's advance. Shayra began to understand the full extent of the human soldier mode. It was not just about surviving attacks or defeating enemies. It taught anticipation, creativity, and improvisation. It guided her to see the battlefield in layers: physical, tactical, and psychological. She could predict not just movements, but intentions. The Concord soldiers were intelligent, but they were also rigid. She exploited every assumption they made, turning their training against them. By the time night fell over the station, Shayra had not only repelled the elite Concord squads, but had also seized control of the central command systems. Cameras, sensors, and turrets were all under her command. The station, once a neutral relic, had become her battlefield, and she had mastered it completely. The human soldier mode whispered suggestions for further consolidation, but Shea realized she had begun improvising independently, blending her alien experience with human strategy. She was no longer following the armor, she was collaborating with it. Through the station's communication network, Shayra intercepted a Concord report. The voice was tense, almost incredulous. "The captain? She is not human, yet she fights as if she commands a legion. How is this possible?"
All our strategies are failing. Shayra allowed herself a faint smile.
Humans had vanished long ago, but their ingenuity lived on. And now, the Concord would learn that underestimating humanity was a mistake they would not survive repeating. Shayra knew she could not remain in the station indefinitely. The Concord would continue sending reinforcements, and holding the facility forever was impossible. But the station had taught her much. She had learned how to use environment, technology, and strategy to overcome superior numbers. She had learned to think several moves ahead, predicting the enemy's behavior and turning it to her advantage. And she had learned that human ingenuity, once awakened, was unstoppable. In a secure chamber overlooking the main docking area, Shayra rested briefly. The armor hummed, monitoring her vitals, repairing minor injuries, and maintaining optimal combat readiness. She closed her eyes for a moment, reflecting on what had happened. Humans had faced extinction countless times. They had survived, adapted, and evolved through creativity, cunning, and resilience. The armor was a manifestation of that legacy, and now it guided her. The first wave of reinforcements approached at dawn. Shayra rose, her posture calm, her mind sharp. The suit projected the battlefield, highlighting potential threats, vulnerabilities, and optimal strategies. She moved silently, preparing ambushes, setting traps, and using environmental controls to manipulate the enemy's advance. The Concord had anticipated resistance, but they could not anticipate the human way of fighting. Shara engaged the new wave of soldiers with precision and efficiency. Each encounter reinforced her understanding of human tactics. She used guerrilla strategies, improvisation, and psychological disruption to destabilize the enemy. They attempted coordinated attacks, but she countered with strategies that no single species had thought to employ. The armor calculated probabilities, simulated outcomes, and suggested actions that allowed her to remain several steps ahead at all times. By midday, the station was secure again. Shayra moved through the corridors, observing the aftermath. The Concord forces were disoriented, their morale shattered. They did not understand the force they had faced. The human soldier mode had allowed her to fight with intelligence, creativity, and adaptability that no Cathari unit could match. Shayra realized that this was the true power of humanity, not in numbers or raw strength, but in the ability to survive, adapt, and overcome through ingenuity. Shayra knew that the Concord would continue to challenge her. They would send elite forces, strategists, and perhaps even their most cunning commanders, but she was ready. The human soldier mode had transformed her, teaching her to anticipate, adapt, and strike with precision. She was no longer merely a captain. She was a master of strategy, a wielder of human ingenuity, and a force the Concord could not predict. As the sun set, Shayra stood in the observation deck, overlooking the stars. The station had become more than a battlefield. It had become a classroom, a proving ground, and a demonstration of human legacy. The armor's hum was steady, comforting, and full of potential. Together, they were prepared for whatever came next. The Concord would learn that humanity, though vanished, had left behind a way of thinking, fighting, and surviving that could not be destroyed. Shayra flexed her gauntlets, feeling the subtle energy feedback of the human armor. It had taught her patience, creativity, and adaptability. It had shown her that battles were not won by strength alone, but by cunning, improvisation, and a refusal to surrender. She had learned to predict, manipulate, and control, and she had become the embodiment of human strategy. When the next Concord reinforcements arrived, they faced not just an alien captain, but a warrior guided by centuries of human combat experience. Shayra smiled faintly. The human soldier mode had unlocked her potential, teaching her to fight like no other being in the galaxy. And the universe would soon understand that humans, even in death, had left behind a force that could not be underestimated. Sharavel moved through the station's corridors once more, confident, calm, and ready. The battles were not over, but she was no longer the same alien captain who had entered the armory days ago. She was stronger, smarter, and guided by a legacy that had survived extinction. The Concord could attack, adapt, and strategize, but she was several moves ahead. Humanity had not only survived through her, it had evolved. And as the station hummed with quiet energy, Shire realized that she had become a new kind of soldier, one who combined alien strength with human ingenuity, unpredictability, and resilience. The human soldier mode had not just enhanced her, it had transformed her, and the universe, whether it knew it or not, was about to witness a force that could not be contained. Shira Vell stood in the command center of the station, her eyes scanning the displays that flickered with information. Concord reinforcements were assembling in orbit, more numerous and more determined than ever. Yet, she felt no fear. The human soldier mode in her armor had taught her patience, strategy, and adaptability. Every potential threat had been analyzed, every probable movement calculated. The universe had underestimated humans for far too long, and now their legacy coursed through her, ready to prove its power. The first wave of ships approached, entering the station's sensor range. Shara could see their formations, the sequence in which troops would deploy, and the likely strategies they would employ. The suit projected multiple outcomes, highlighting the paths with the highest chances of success. She understood them instantly. Humans had survived through unpredictability, improvisation, and relentless determination. And she would use all three. As the first drop pods entered the atmosphere, Shayra moved to a reinforced observation deck. From there, she could see the soldiers disembarking, weapons ready, confidence written on their faces. The suit whispered tactical suggestions, but she already anticipated them. She had learned to think like the humans did, combining instinct with analysis, improvisation with precision. She was no longer merely following instructions. She was creating strategy in real time, guided by centuries of human ingenuity. The first soldiers touched down and moved toward the station's entrance. Shira watched them carefully, noting their speed, their formation, and their awareness. Then she acted. She moved silently through a side corridor, emerging behind the troops with perfect timing. Her gauntlets extended energy pulses that disoriented them, and she struck with precision, neutralizing several before they even realized she was there. The human soldier mode predicted their reactions, guiding her movements and amplifying her instincts. As more troops advanced, Shayra employed every tool at her disposal. The station's doors and corridors became extensions of her will. She activated automated defense systems, rerouted power to create hazards, and used the environment to isolate and control enemy movements. Every action was deliberate, every decision informed by the human legacy embedded in her armor. The Concord soldiers found themselves trapped in a battlefield designed by an opponent who could anticipate their every move. Hours passed as she fought with precision and creativity. Each encounter reinforced her understanding of human tactics. Humans had survived against impossible odds, not by brute force, but by cleverness, adaptability, and determination. The armor allowed her to harness those traits, applying them in ways the Concord could not predict. She moved like a shadow, striking when least expected, vanishing before retaliation could succeed, and using the station itself as a weapon. The Concord attempted to escalate their attack, deploying heavier units and armored vehicles. Shayra analyzed their approach, calculating vulnerabilities and predicting their movements. The suit suggested optimal attack sequences and potential traps. She used the station's mechanical systems to create obstacles, divert energy to disrupt machinery, and guide enemy units into positions where they could be neutralized efficiently. Every action demonstrated human ingenuity at work through her. By the next day, the station was secure again. Shayra moved through the halls, observing the remnants of the conflict. The Concord forces were disoriented, their morale shattered. They had faced an opponent unlike any they had encountered before. Not merely an alien commander, but one guided by the human legacy of survival, strategy, and adaptability. Shayra felt a sense of satisfaction, not in destruction, but in the mastery she had achieved. The station was her domain, and she had turned it into a testament to what humanity had once been. Yet she knew the Concord would not relent. They would send their most skilled officers, elite soldiers trained for high-stakes engagement, and perhaps even experimental technology. The human soldier mode in her armor anticipated this, projecting strategies for extended conflict, contingency plans for overwhelming numbers, and methods to manipulate the battlefield to her advantage. Shayra felt a surge of determination. Humans had survived extinction, and through this armor, their tactics lived on. The next assault began at dusk. Shayra positioned herself in the central control chamber, where she could coordinate the station's defenses and engage the enemy directly. The Concord deployed squads and mechanized units, moving with precision and confidence. Shayra remained calm, her movements guided by the human soldier mode. She analyzed their approach, predicted formations, and calculated the optimal sequence of actions to neutralize each threat efficiently. As the battle unfolded, Shayra demonstrated the full extent of human ingenuity. She used the station's systems to control lighting, airflow, and gravity in selective areas, creating confusion and slowing enemy advancement. She intercepted soldiers with precise, non-lethal strikes, disarming and isolating them. She anticipated movements before they occurred, turning the Concord's training against them. Every action showcased the combination of instinct, creativity, and strategy that had allowed humans to survive for centuries. By nightfall, the Concord's assault had faltered completely. Shayra moved through the station's corridors, her armor pulsing softly as it analyzed the battlefield. The human soldier mode projected simulations for the next stage, but she realized she no longer needed them. She had internalized their logic, their strategies, and their adaptability. She had become a master of human tactics, blending her alien instincts with the lessons embedded in the armor. The Concord forces were defeated, not by overwhelming strength, but by cleverness, improvisation, and relentless determination. Shayra paused to observe the aftermath. The station was intact, secure, and under her control. The Concord soldiers had been neutralized efficiently, their plans dismantled before they could succeed. The human soldier mode had not only guided her in combat, but had taught her to see the battlefield in layers: physical, tactical, and psychological. She understood her enemy's thoughts, anticipated their reactions, and manipulated their actions to achieve maximum efficiency. She had become a living embodiment of human ingenuity. She reflected on what this meant. Humans had vanished long ago, but their legacy had endured. They had created technology that could teach, adapt, and survive even in their absence. Through this armor, Shayra had become a vessel for that legacy, carrying it forward into the universe. She realized that the Concord had underestimated not just humans, but the principles that had allowed them to survive against impossible odds. The following days were quiet, but Shayra remained vigilant. The Concord would attempt further incursions, and other forces might test the station. She used the time to explore its systems, learning the full extent of its capabilities. She understood that humans had not only designed weapons but had embedded strategies, tactics, and methods of adaptation that could outthink and outmaneuver even the most disciplined forces. Every system, every function, was a lesson in survival and creativity. One morning, she detected new ships approaching in orbit. The Concord had sent reinforcements once again, more numerous and determined than before. Shayra smiled faintly. She was ready. The human soldier mode had prepared her for exactly this scenario. She had learned to anticipate, adapt, and innovate in real time. The station was her battlefield, the armor her guide, and her mind the executor of strategies honed by human legacy. As the ships descended, Shayra moved to a strategic position overlooking the main landing zone. The Concorde deployed pods and squads, confident in their superiority. Shayra analyzed their formation instantly, projecting multiple outcomes in her mind. She anticipated every move, calculated the timing of every engagement, and prepared contingencies for unexpected actions. The human soldier mode worked seamlessly with her instincts, creating a unity of thought, action, and strategy that no enemy could match. The first wave of soldiers landed. Shayra struck immediately, using precision, timing, and environmental manipulation to neutralize key units. She moved like a shadow, striking unpredictably and vanishing before counterattacks could succeed. The suit guided her movements, suggested optimal paths, and highlighted opportunities for ambush. She was no longer merely fighting. She was orchestrating the battlefield, controlling every aspect with human ingenuity at her command. The battle continued throughout the day, escalating in intensity. Shayra used every advantage, combining her alien agility with the armor's predictive capabilities. She manipulated doors, ventilation systems, and gravity fields, isolating enemy squads and neutralizing threats efficiently. The conquered soldiers found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn, their training and numbers ineffective against the combination of instinct, strategy, and adaptability that Shayra embodied. By evening, the station was fully secure. The Concorde forces were either neutralized or forced to retreat. Shayra moved through the halls, observing the outcome. The station, once a relic of human ingenuity, had become a demonstration of its enduring power. The human soldier mode had not only guided her to victory, but had transformed her into a master strategist, blending alien instincts with centuries of human tactical knowledge. Shayra realized the full significance of her actions. Humanity had survived not through dominance, but through cleverness, adaptability, and determination. Their legacy, encoded in technology and strategy, had endured beyond extinction. Through her, it lived on, shaping the universe in ways the Concorde could not anticipate. She had become a living testament to what humans had achieved, a force that combined resilience, creativity, and relentless ingenuity. As night fell over the station, Shayra stood in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. She felt a connection to the humans who had created the armor, a species long vanished, but whose legacy had survived in a way more powerful than anyone could imagine. She understood that the battles she had fought were not just for survival, but for the demonstration of human ingenuity, a lesson for the universe that humans, even in absence, were not to be underestimated. Shayra flexed her gauntlets, feeling the subtle energy feedback from the armor. The human soldier mode had transformed her, teaching her patience, strategy, and creativity. She had learned to anticipate, adapt, and control. She had become a master of tactics, a wielder of human ingenuity, and a force the Concorde could not predict. The station was secure, her enemies defeated, and her understanding of human strategy complete. The universe would remember this day. They would remember the alien captain who moved with human brilliance, who fought with ingenuity, and who turned the principles of a vanished species into a force that could not be stopped. Shayra smiled faintly, knowing that humanity's legacy had not only survived, but thrived. Through her, the universe had witnessed the enduring power of human creativity, strategy, and resilience. And as the stars stretched endlessly beyond the station, Shayra realized the truth. Humans might be gone, but they had left behind a force that could shape the fate of the galaxy. She was that force, and she would carry their legacy forward, unstoppable, unpredictable, and unmatched. The Concorde, and any who would challenge her, would learn the meaning of true ingenuity, the legacy of survival, and the unstoppable will of humanity.